Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. In this recording, I wanted to share my testimony. I know going back on my videos and all that kind of stuff, in my walk with the Lord, I went down a lot of wrong paths, a lot of right paths, and stuff like that. And I think so I know my testimonies are not very clear and precise. You have to kind of, chew the meat and spit out the bones, or whatever the saying is. And but I just wanted to go through my testimony again, and I just think it would be helpful from a clear mind, from a mind away from as much persecution as I was dealing with in the past, and hopefully it could be more clear and concise. All the gritty details have already been given, so I don't think I have to go over that stuff. But as far as maybe theology and maybe why people can understand why I believe the things that I believe, and because there's a lot to cover. And I just wanted to talk about it, and personally it just helps me because I don't really have anyone to talk to, especially about this stuff. So most people know, mostly everybody knows that my story started with my issue, the scuffle I got in with the mafia and the FBI and all that stuff. And so when that was at its peak and I was at my lowest, I was just pretty much sitting at home drinking and waiting for something to happen, which was never going to happen, and all that kind of stuff, just wasting away, chain smoking and drinking. It was towards the end of 2012, around Christmas time. It was probably around, I don't know what day exactly, but probably between around December 15th up until December 21st, maybe something like that. Somewhere around that time. I couldn't explain it or understand why, but I felt a divine presence in my life. And since I was totally alone in this really traumatic situation, overwhelmingly traumatic situation, and I wasn't really well in the head, I just, saw that divine presence as a friend, and kind of hard to explain. But I was going for a walk early one morning around 5 a.m. And this was before December 21st of 2012. So probably a couple days before, or a week before, that week before. And this was the first intervention or the first miracle that happened in my life. And of course the FBI is watching your every move, you're a slave. And so I'm going for a walk in my neighborhood around 5 a.m. And I reached a certain corner. It's kind of like a really small public park, if you even want to call it one. And when I looked up at that corner, there was bushes there. And these Christmas, it was around Christmas time, so everyone has their Christmas lights up. And these Christmas lights went on. And it's 5 a.m. The sun is going up. Christmas, it wasn't somebody's house. This was kind of a really small public corner with maybe a bench and a bush, And there were Christmas lights on that bush. And those Christmas lights went on as I was walking towards it. And it was around 5 a.m. or so. The sun was coming up. So it didn't make any sense for those Christmas lights to magically just come on as the sun was coming up. So It surpassed all logic. So even if they were on a timer, why would the state or the county or whatever have Christmas lights turn on as the sun was coming up? It should be the opposite. As the sun is going down, the Christmas lights should be going on. So was I taken back? I wasn't even taken back by it. I felt like I was just so, I guess what most people would consider mentally deranged, but just really just so lonely. And I guess I always felt some type of closeness with God my whole life, even though I didn't know what that meant. It's just unexplainable, but, I was in trouble then. I was in a real trouble. And so that was the first really, that was kind of the spark that set things off in my testimony. And I guess the FBI was watching, and obviously, and I don't know what they made out of it, but over the past couple days, from the best I can remember, I started feeling supernatural things. I just felt God's presence, and I just took it as like a friend, a casual friend. It wasn't something I trembled at. It was just a casual friend that I really, really needed. And that's probably not the proper way to handle it. But that's kind of how it was for me. And so I started feeling these things. I felt the Lord's presence. I mean, I was at my rock bottom end, I felt really warm sensation one time when I was playing over my keyboard, and when I was walking out, my entire body just felt warm. And I don't know if that was God or the devil, but supernatural, spiritual things started happening to me that week. And I just felt like, hallelujah, I'm saved, because I was just in this mess with the mafia and the FBI all by myself, and I lost everything. No one knows this is happening to me, and blah, blah, blah. And then, so fast forward, kind of the kickstart of my testimony after that happened, I guess, out of God's goodness, whatever He allowed that stuff to happen, whatever source that stuff did come from, I think it was an ease into the things that were to come in the next week or so. And the first big part of my testimony, which I don't focus on anymore because I do believe it was of the devil and is insignificant. Now I understand that, but I had that first quote unquote major supernatural spiritual experience on December 21st, 2012 on the Mayan calendar. And it was something to the television. I really felt like the television was talking to me in ways that, I think with the testimonies that I've shared recently, I think people could better understand these things. I just can't put it into words. And something happened, and I totally received it. I received it as like some type of divine intervention, and when it was over, I just laughed, so happy, and I just went to go hang out with my friends and play poker with my friends right after that. And that's not normal to react to when you have a supernatural experience. You should be scared or shuddering, or I don't know. But that's how I was, because I was just really sick. I was really just so alone. I was such a lonely person, very obnoxious, very prideful, all that kind of stuff, and alcoholic, and all that kind of stuff, And so that experience happened, and then the FBI, I guess, took that seriously, and all of a sudden, it's like, okay, that was a big date, December 21st, 2012. That was the day the Mayan calendar ended, according to our mainstream conception. And And I had this supernatural experience on that day at that night. And so that was a big deal. And for very many years, I thought that was the cornerstone of my testimony. That's what I thought, why this was all happening. It was all about the Mayan calendar. I didn't know anything about the Bible. I didn't know anything about Bible prophecy or the end times or anything. So many years after that, I really believe that my whole testimony and all this stuff was revolved around the Mayan calendar. But then, of course, this most people are already familiar with. Just a couple days later, there was a real divine intervention, which was unmistakably the Lord. And that shook me to my core, obviously. I don't think I have to get much into the details of that. But I know I've said recently in the past that I noticed the CIA getting involved after the 25th. But really, I remember thinking back, Christmas morning, I remember first seeing the CIA, they have their SUVs right at that bodega down the block from my house as I was going to buy cigarettes or something. And because of this whole Mayan calendar thing. And I realized that's not FBI. I figured it was the CIA. And my attitude was just like, I'm saved. Get the heck away from me. I'm free. Like, leave me alone. And that was my attitude for a very long time. And, all I wanted to do was just be left alone and go back to my pathetic life or whatever. And I really felt like it was God, or I felt God's presence that day on the 25th. And yeah, I treated the Lord like a casual friend, and, telling, that was the last day I ever smoked a cigarette, because, and I just remember just telling God to myself, come on, it's Christmas. I'm going to have, let me smoke. It's okay. God's good. God understands, it's all well. And after what happened that night, it rocked me to the core, and it rocked me to the core, and I never had a cigarette after that. That's for sure. And, I don't know. The point of this video is not to get into those details. But I really want to talk more about the CIA and the aliens and all this kind of stuff as a part of my testimony, because I haven't really talked about that. And so after the Christmas thing happened, I waited around the house for a while and blah, blah, blah. Eventually I did get a job at a deli. And I thought, I was freaked out. I'm like, oh my God. I just thought I didn't know what was I didn't know. I thought, wow, I'm the reason why the Mayan calendar stopped. Like, what's going on? This is crazy. And eventually during the time, I found a job at this garbage deli, trying to get my life together a couple months after that, February, March. And I worked at that deli maybe 6 months. And I tried to do the right thing according to the world. I worked every hour I could, and I saved my money making, my $8 an hour. I saved whatever money I could. And I would have supernatural experiences while I was working there, and thinking I was talking to God, and the CIA was there, and there was a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure. It's not fun when there's some kind of supernatural thing happens on the radio, and all of a sudden, this guy goes up to the deli counter. He's obviously FBI or CIA, and now you got to answer to me, and you don't even know what's going on. You're just trembling. and it's just not fun, you know? So eventually I broke, and I couldn't take the pressure anymore, because of, I guess, their harassment, or, you know, they weren't happy with me. You know, I was a loser, you know? I'm just a loser, this punk or whatever, this, you know, whatever, who says, man, hey man, you know, I act like I'm stoned all the time, whatever. So eventually I broke, and I ran away to New York City, and I spent all my money at a hotel in New York City, and I stayed there for a week, and I cold turkey just walked out of my job and blew all the money I saved and ended up with nothing, and that didn't solve anything. The harassment, of course, kept continuing, and it was all pointless. I had some good times in New York City, and it was the spring, some times with God, according to where I was at. I didn't have the Holy Spirit. I didn't know anything about Jesus, none of that stuff. That stuff I didn't even start learning about the childhood story of Jesus till like 2015, maybe, like 2015. So this is all 2013. And after that, all of a sudden, well, lo and behold, I'm trying to think. Trying to get this right. I knew somehow that aliens were involved in this Mayan calendar thing. And the gag was, all of a sudden, these aliens who were human, excuse me, you got to battle the tongue rolling. These aliens who were human got involved. I don't exactly remember where in the timeline how I knew that. But I knew they were involved. That this had to do with the aliens. I was supposed to have a child with this female alien, and for me personally, all I ever wanted was a happy family and a loving wife and children and all that kind of stuff. And but me and my sickness and in my perverse mind and all that kind of stuff, because that's what I thought was the normal. I was rejected. Praise God. But before all that stuff happened, like recently, I get, the harassment from the CIA started, and the CIA started what's called gang stalking, the gang stalking phenomenon. If you don't know it, it's spiritual persecution. It's a spiritual, relentless attack on your nervous system meant to slowly break you down, wax you old like a garment, dash you to pieces, and until you eventually just discredit yourself. And it's a soft kill, and that's what the FBI or CIA does when they can't arrest you. They'll just, the wonderful magic of surveillance. You have someone under surveillance, you could do anything. So what they pretty much do is they take control of your reality and start doing psychotic things when you expect them the least, and you just go insane. You don't know what's real and what's not, and in the hope that you just discredit yourself. So they do have a reason to arrest you. So yeah. So there's plenty of research on that. So the CIA really started the gang stalking. I did experience harassment from the FBI even before that. Around very shortly after the Christmas thing happened, like they were, I would usually, when I would take a shower, I would poke my head out the window and just look out the window, and they would fly their helicopter and make sure, haha, we see you, like to sexually exploit you and stuff like that. They would do that stuff, and that eventually led me to an issue that I still have from all the lack of privacy, that I don't use the restroom or the shower. I can't use that with the lights on. And so I always have the lights off in the bathroom or something, because I just feel more relaxed. I just feel like I have more privacy. And so that started that psychological issue that I still carry. That was the start. Anyway, going back, the CIA would eventually gang stalk me, manipulating things in my reality, using children, using the elderly, using unsuspecting people to harass you, And those who know it just know it. I'm not going to get into the details. But, I couldn't take it, so I snapped. And I thought, I was kind of a wise guy, I was kind of sarcastic guy. I was in my old life. And so I thought it'd be funny if I just called 911 on them. And I'm like, yeah, like, I'm the reason the Mayan calendar stopped. Like, all this stuff is happening. Like, help. And that was a mistake. And they just brought me right to the psych ward. And, these CIA guys were right behind me in the ambulance, harassing me and stuff like that, like mocking me pretty much, like, haha. And so I found myself in the psych ward, and lo and behold, the patients, the doctors, the whole thing was a setup. Everybody was in the CIA there. Everybody was in the CIA, and it was like, okay, we got you. You're with us now. Stuck in a psych ward with them. Now, this is a common thing if you're gang stalked. They try to get you to act out, so you do call the police, or you do that. And depending on, some people don't come out of the psych ward. Some people don't come out of jail. Some people don't get out of having the cops called on them or whatever. But for me, the situation I was in, they didn't want to kill me, or at least just yet. So it was all God's good timing. So I was able to make it out of there alive. And I was heavily gang stalked inside the psych ward. They're just doing psychotic things. And it was scary. The patients, the doctors, everybody who worked on that floor was in the CIA. It was all cover up. And yes, the insurance company paid for it all. And so I'm living with these people for 2 weeks. And at the end of the day, these CIA agents I realized, were just being used. They didn't know the truth. Pretty much the spilling the beans was, hey, aliens came looking for you, and you're supposed to mate with this woman, have a child with this woman. That's what I was being told, and everyone's all excited, yay, aliens, and blah blah blah, and all that kind of stuff. And because we all believe what the world tells us, we're on a heliocentric model and all that kind of stuff, right? So this kind of stems into why I believe in the flat earth and why aliens are not of God, and we remain in God's image, all that kind of stuff. This is deeply rooted into why I believe what I believe, and why in my past, I was deceived as well. So and I apologize. I know I'm not the best talker and stuff like that, but I'm doing the best I can. So, what I was told in the psych ward was these aliens, they were human. Forget about space, like spaceships and stuff. They used time travel, and they lived at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Now, ironically, if you study the meat of the Bible, you can find this stuff in the Bible. There is mention of people living underneath the sea and all that kind of stuff. So none of this stuff, and you can discern that none of it is of God. So this was my experience. And eventually I was released from the psych ward. 2 weeks. The insurance company only pays for 2 weeks if you behave yourself, if you give them no reason. And of course I was they gave me a diagnosis as schizophrenic. So that's a great way to throw someone in the garbage can. And they gave me some BS meds, very minimum. that really meant nothing. It was all just a cover up. And there you go. I was released. And it wasn't until I got out of the psych ward, they just want to, it's like attack while we pretend to be your friends. Then they like, all right, you want to, because I believed in the whole America is freedom kind of stuff. I was still in the world. And, you want to fight for your freedom? Guess what? Now we're reading your mind. What do you think about that? And then I realized that after I got out of the psych ward, they started reading my mind. And or letting me know that now the harassment was hooked up to my mind. And all the surveillance that was all hooked up to my... Now they were able to read my thoughts. And that's when the trauma-based mind control starts, with the horn honks and all that kind of stuff. So, classic gang stalking stuff. Because this stuff is satanic and it's spiritual. And the CIA, they're just trained in this. The FBI, they're trained in this. They don't even know what they're doing is absolutely against God and is of satanic origins. And if anyone's familiar with my testimony, yes, the Lord did have something to say about that. When the CIA, when they first started going into my home and started rearranging stuff in my home, and then that's when I had that divine intervention of September 6th, 2013. So, and so the Lord addressed all that. And maybe I'm running a little bit out of order, but I did experience, after I was rejected and persecuted for not, this woman looked like a supermodel. And yes, I did have contact with all these aliens, and they were human, pasty skin. And when you do the research, it's not uncommon to hear about it. I think they're called Nordics. And are they human underneath that skin? Probably not. But from my experience, they were very kind and courteous, and they roam among us. They're all over the place. And during this time in my life, I saw them everywhere. When I would run away to New York City, that's when I first saw these aliens. They had me under surveillance, and they were very kind. And I remember I saw this woman with pasty white skin, an older woman, long blonde hair, with a male. And right away, when I first saw them, number one, I knew they had me under surveillance, and they were just very kind. The way they looked at me, and I could tell they were not from here. And, right in broad daylight on 14th Street in New York City. And so at that time of my life, it's like when I was involved in this alien stuff, and it was just orchestrated from my persecution, really. But it seemed like I would see them everywhere. They had me under surveillance, and a lot of them seemed very compassionate. A lot of them very attractive women. And I remember walking and just looking in a restaurant, just walking down the street in New York City, and the waiter looked at me. It's like, oh, okay, there's one. He has me under surveillance. He's reading my thoughts. Okay. And it's weird. It's like a spiritual thing that was turned on, because now I don't see them. I don't know. It's like something I think the Lord allows you to see or don't. I don't know. But now I don't notice. I couldn't notice them. I don't know. Nor do I look for them either. But at that time it was just weird. It's just I was just able to recognize them, pluck them out of the crowd really easily. I don't know. I can't explain it. So, whatever. This was all deception. This whole Mayan calendar thing was a deception. When you do your research on the Mayan culture, it was founded by the quote-unquote serpent in the sky, okay? So the whole Mayan calendar thing was a satanic deception, meant for my persecution and all that kind of stuff. All orchestrated by higher people on the totem pole using the CIA and these aliens as pawns. That's the best I could come up with. And that makes sense to me. And I don't have all the answers. but that, and I did experience miracles because the CIA would keep coming up against me, and it got demonic. It got those who are gang stalks, it's color coordinated. The people start looking demonic, and it just gets really weird, man. It got demonic. And, since I didn't have Jesus or know anything about Jesus, the very rare times the Lord would kind of present a miracle, it would have to be in the physical world, not in the spirit, because I didn't have Jesus Christ. So the Father was so good. There were just a handful of times where these miracles or interventions would happen in the natural. And one of them, after I was rejected and persecuted for not being able to have a child with this alien woman, thank God, praise God, and God, the horror. I mean, I don't even want to talk about the horrors and the misery of those times, but I was rejected. I'm like, oh God, I bought into all this. I thought it was real. I thought, oh God, I failed, and I'm trying to make it up to God. So I jumped into Judaism. That's the only thing that made sense to me. And so I was reading my JPS Tanakh, cover to cover, in this time in my life, in the fall of, I guess it was 2013. I don't know. Yeah, the fall of 2013. Yeah. Yeah, it was the fall of 2013, after the divine intervention on September. That time in my life, I was reading the Tanakh, cover to cover, and one little miracle happened. That I was reading a verse in Isaiah, and I can't pluck it out because I just can't, because the JPS translation is a little bit different than the standard verses I'm used to. So I still haven't been able to find that verse, but I was reading a verse, and according to the JPS translation, or at least the JPS translation I had at that time, because they are different, it was a verse about the cattle not entering Israel or New Jerusalem. I understand what it was about now. It was about there being, the certain cattle not being able to enter the kingdom. That's what the verse was pretty much about. And we are the cattle, And as I was read that verse, the light on my lampstand, in my bedstand, the lamp I used next to my bed, the light bulb went half on, went reduced to half power, and then turned back on after I read the verse. All right, that's an impossibility. That had to be God. And, of course, the CIA, all demonic, coming after me like, you're not entering God's New Jerusalem, and we're fighting for God. They're, really believing they were doing the right thing for God by persecuting me, and just crazy demonic. If you're just familiar with that gang stalking spirit, it's just, that's just how it is. Just no intellect, just completely narcissistic and psychopathic. And so that was kind of, now I could discern, it was just like, that was the Lord saying, these guys are not making it in the kingdom. And I could see why. They were already demonic, and, I don't know. So, so that, and I'm not saying everybody in the CIA is evil. It's not like that. This is just this is my lot. These are my experiences. Obviously, aliens are not of God. If you really know your Bibles, you can discern that. And understanding the flat earth model is really important to know that. That's the only way to understand that. And all my experiences point to that. And so these aliens were connected with the CIA, who got all demonic. It was all very satanic, guys. All satanic. Those are kind of like my experiences with that. I'm thinking. I was gang stalked for a long time with the FBI and the CIA. I dove into Orthodox Judaism. I thought the more religious I got, the best I can get closer and make it up to God. And I went through a lot of miserable, scary times, having all sorts of supernatural experiences that were not of God. And, hearing the voices in my head, all this stuff, the spiritual weaponry that they use, if those who know it just know it, voice to skull, stuff like that. But I didn't know any better for a very long time. I thought it was the Lord. I thought everything was God. Everything supernatural and spiritual was God. I didn't know. I didn't know until I eventually came out on the internet and I found Nanania. I started listening to Seth Daniels' podcast and realizing, wait a minute, whoa, I'm not alone here and there's something going on and all that stuff. So, while diving into Orthodox Judaism, going into very painful things, fasting for 3 days, standing and praying for days on end without a break, crying, miserable times because these spiritual forces that were up against me, I was just listening to them, thinking it was God, but it was not. And how did I eventually get out? Well, one morning I woke up really early. Oh God, just thinking about these times, it's just really, really miserable. One morning I woke up really early and I have these Christmas lights in my bedroom at that time and they were not plugged in. And I told myself I wanted to go back to sleep, and I told myself, wake up. And all of a sudden, those Christmas lights, which were not plugged in, blinked on and off, like twice. Right? An impossibility. And I knew that was God. And I got scared. And that freaked me out. I didn't understand until like a year later what that meant. But now that was the Lord. And from all my experience, looking back, I know when you get something from God, the devil swoops right in and goes on major attack. And that's exactly what happened. I started getting demonic attacks and attacks so bad, I eventually said, F it, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't care. I quit. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I think that's exactly what God wanted. God made that little miracle happen because he knew I would get attacked so much, I would just get fed up and say, F it all, I'm done. And around that time, I went to California to visit my sister. And I recently recorded that acoustic EP I had that was whatever. And so that was the end of my Orthodox Judaism days. And it wasn't until a couple months I got back from California. I was working at Goodwill and mind you, I also, Satan can do a lot of things, and God gives us by the fruit of our own ways. God doesn't reveal his own nature to us, if at all. He meets us where we're at, because does God even have his own nature? I don't know. When you look back at my testimony, it's all the things, the ways God revealed himself it was through love. He meets us where we're at, Now, while I was going through this persecution with the CIA and stuff during these times, the satanic attack, I would have a lot of persecution with streetlights. And streetlights would go on and off, running parallel to my thoughts. And Satan has that ability. And nobody knew what that was. It was all spiritual and supernatural. And every time that would happen, a helicopter would fly by. They had to document it. And it would happen to me all the time. And it would get very scary. I remember a whole corner, the lights go out on me in New York City, a whole square, like bam. And it was probably a response to what I experienced on Christmas. And just Satan using that to manipulate. And so these other miracles, how I knew it was God, when these lights turning on and off, because I was used to that already. But But them not being plugged in, there's no power source. That's how I knew it was of the Lord. And, all looking back, And so, Satan is the prince of the air, as the Bible says. So, so there's that. I just wanted to share these experiences, I guess. Eventually I came on the internet and I found Ninania and listening to Zeph Daniels' podcast, realizing, hey, I'm experiencing all this gang stalking too, and realizing, oh, okay, Bible prophecy, and there's the last days, and there's other people out there, like me, and for a good year, I still thought it was all about the Mayan calendar. Like, my testimony was all about the Mayan calendar for a very long time. But that doesn't mean anything. That's all a satanic deception. It doesn't mean anything. So, I don't know. I just wanted to share these experiences. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I'm leaving out. I just wanted to share this stuff. Like, there was a time, those of you know, I had a crisis of faith. I ran astray from the faith and went the wrong way out of ignorance. And I've had experiences with UFOs as a child. Peppered throughout my life, them stalking me. And one of them I actually caught on in a photo. It only came out as a black dot in a photo. I had a picture of me and my friends when I was in my 20s at Montauk, and we were just hanging out. And when you look at the picture in the background, you see this little black dot in the sky, and it's not natural. I knew it right out the way. Well, look, it's a UFO. I used to joke around about it. I didn't know it was real until I realized that I couldn't find that picture in my stash anymore, that the CIA stole that picture from my room. So that's how I knew, oh, that really was a UFO. So, and I remember seeing a UFO as a child stalking me, and at night, and the Lord did confirm to me, as a child, I'm like, look, that's my friend, stuff like that. It's just, I remember driving with my mother and seeing this light hovering over the harbor, kind of following our car. And I remember rolling down my window, because I was really big in the UFOs when I was a kid, to hear if it was a helicopter. And it was silent. There was no helicopter, nothing. It was just a single light just sitting there, stationary. And there was no sound. And I knew that was a UFO. And, as being a kid, I'm like, look, it's my friend, stuff like that. And the Lord confirmed to me, he was like, no, that was not your friend. And it was a UFO. So, that kind of all the experiences I've had, that's why I eventually went astray, which eventually led me to the revelation of what I believe, of why I believe what I do believe in the flat earth model, in biblical cosmology, and that all aliens and UFOs are not of God. And all my experiences absolutely confirm that throughout all my testimony. And I'm not sharing them all. Like, I'll share one time, probably, I guess I'm still going in chronological order here. I was on YouTube at this time, and I went to the mall, and, just videotaping my persecution, because that's where I was at then. And I ate Taco Bell. Now, I was just waking up at this point in my life, and I knew enough not to watch TV. I knew not to drink soda, not to eat fast food. It was all a lie and blah, blah, blah. I was just waking up to all that stuff. And I was really hungry. I had no money. So I ate Taco Bell. And right when I ate after I ate that, my knees were getting really weak, and I felt sick. And so I was walking around the mall. Like, I didn't think I was going to make it home. I thought I could have passed out and died. Like, I knew it was an attack. I knew it was some kind of spiritual attack. And all of a sudden, all these beautiful women who work in the mall are just surrounding me like, haha, we got them. And I knew they were aliens. That they walk among us. They're all over the place. And they're attractive because that's probably not what they really look like underneath. And before that incident happened, I'll just rewind a little. Before I ate that Taco Bell, while I first entered the mall, I saw this really tall, beautiful, more brownish, African American looking type of woman who was really tall, but I guess she would be beautiful like a model, but underneath that skin, man, that soul was not human. It was just like a lizard or something, like weird stuff. And I'm like, whoa. And then, so that's how I knew when I ate the Taco Bell, I got that spiritual attack. I didn't think I was probably going to pass out right there. And all these women are surrounding me. I knew they were aliens. But I walked through it. And I said, I'm out of here. I don't care, because I'm stubborn. So I drove home anyway. And I made it home just fine. And I never had fast food really after that, since then. And I really think that was the Lord telling me stop having fast food, or, He just wanted me to have these experiences to open my eyes for my discernment, So, I don't know. I just wanted to share some of these things. It's pretty interesting. And maybe it brings some clarity. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that I would like to share. And I'm just thinking. I don't know. After what happened on Christmas, it was such a tender time, and it took me a really long time to recover from that. And I recently shared the whole "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" thing, and the White Stripes thing. But during that time, around the whole "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" thing, I was just so depressed, and I was just looking for God. I just wanted to be with the Lord. I didn't care. I was so... No one knows what's going on with me. Heaven and earth is coming after me. All the stuff I'm being persecuted for, and for my sin, I have heaven, the FBI, the CIA, aliens are coming after me over this stuff. Freaking all heaven and earth is coming after me. It's enough. So... And that's all I was told from the Lord. That it's enough. So I'm going to leave it at that. And I know, I don't have anything to hide. And I know there are people, but I'm just obeying what I was told by God, is to not get involved and to be a doormat. And, stand still, and the Lord fights for it. There's nothing really to worry about. So... it's fine. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to share these experiences. Maybe it'll, because my testimony is it's so complicated, and I know my videos on my YouTube channel don't really do a good job clarity-wise. That's for sure, because I'm still trying to find the answers while I'm sharing my testimony. But after the Christmas thing, those times were so tender, and I did have these supernatural experiences, little help, and I don't feel comfortable sharing them. I don't know. But looking back, some of them are really amazing. And I would just be so depressed, and it would happen right when I would wake up from a nap, and I would always have the TV on. I was still watching TV at that time. And it would be through a movie. And ironic stuff like The Truman Show. I had an experience through The Truman Show. And when I woke up watching I fell asleep to The Truman Show. When I woke up, and there's a scene came on, and a voice said something, and I've watched that movie again to look for that scene, and that scene doesn't exist. And it was just a guy holding a scotch glass. It seemed like a therapy session, and all you see is his hands holding a scotch glass, and referring to drinking, and it just said, I don't blame you for riding into the storm. I didn't blame you then, and I don't blame you now. And I've searched that movie, and that scene doesn't exist. So I don't know. But I would have a couple of those experiences during these times when I was working at that deli, these tender times in 2013, just completely shell-shocked and just totally smitten over the Lord and just like a child. And there was a scene from Braveheart telling me to wake up. When Mel Gibson's slain wife is telling him to wake up in that dream. And that spoke to me. And now I understand what that means, because I was asleep then. It says, come out of the world, wake up, come out of the world. And that's it. And I fell asleep watching the movie Dune, and I woke up. I would have these experiences right when I woke up, but I woke up and the scene just said the same thing that predicted you can destroy you. And I said, whoa, okay. So I threw away all the Mayan calendar stuff and never looked back. I went to go study everything I could about the Mayans, and I just threw it all in the garbage. Never looked back after that incident. And I don't know, just little warnings from heaven, I guess. I don't know. I guess that's all I really wanted to share. I don't know. So thanks for listening, guys. I know this is pretty long. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Hopefully I can post this. God bless you all. Thanks for listening.